You've probably seen them on the streets. They look like a bicycle, right? But some of them have the power of a motorcycle. And this has created this really dangerous gray area where a fun ride can turn into a serious legal problem, and it's putting everyone in a really tough spot. So today, let's break down this growing conflict. This one sentence from a teenager on Reddit, it just perfectly captures the frustration at the heart of this whole thing. It's the story of a kid trying to do everything right, only to get caught in a battle that's way bigger than his afternoon ride. Let's start with his story.
So we're in Temecula, California. We've got a 16-year-old who just got his driver's license, and he's out on his e-bike. In his mind, he's being totally safe, totally responsible. But he's about to get a crash course in just how complicated and messy the rules have become.
Picture this. He's decked out in a helmet, gloves, all the gear. He's cruising at just 10 miles an hour. One cop even gives him a thumbs up just moments before another one pulls him over. The kid's polite, he's cooperative, he hands over his license, but that's when the situation just completely spirals because the officers realize this isn't your average e-bike.
And this is where you can really see the two sides of the story just collide. From the police's point of view, the second they saw the bike had no pedals, it stopped being a bicycle. They decided to test its power. First, they clocked it at 29 miles per hour. Then they found a sport mode that pushed it all the way to 50. So to them, this was an unregistered motor vehicle. The kid is pleading. His dad even shows up and offers to ride it home legally, but it didn't matter. The bike got impounded and the kid got a court date.
And that whole standoff really gets to the absolute core of the problem. What are these things? I mean, they're sold online like toys, sometimes directly to kids, but they have the power of a serious motor vehicle, and the law is just struggling to keep up.
This is where it gets so confusing for everyone. On one side, they look and feel like bicycles. They're marketed like them, sold like them. But on the other side, legally, at least in places like California, if it doesn't have pedals and can go over a certain speed, it's basically an off-highway motorcycle. That means it needs to be registered, you need a motorcycle license, and you absolutely cannot ride it on streets, sidewalks, or bike lanes. It's a total recipe for conflict.
But this confusion, it isn't just about tickets or having your bike towed. When you mix these high speeds, young riders, and this massive legal gray area, the consequences can be absolutely tragic. And that brings us to a really heartbreaking story out of Los Angeles.
It was January 31st, 2021. 12-year-old Molly Steinsapir was riding on the back of a Rad Runner e-bike. Her 11-year-old friend was at the controls. They were just two friends doing what kids do, out for a ride in their own neighborhood. According to the lawsuit that Molly's parents filed later, as the bike started picking up speed going down this hill, it just became unstable. The 11-year-old driver, she tried hitting the brakes, but she just couldn't get the bike to slow down. She lost control, and both girls were thrown from the bike. Her friend, thankfully, survived with cuts and bruises. But Molly suffered a massive traumatic brain injury. For the next 16 days, her mom chronicled her fight online, and thousands of people from all over rallied behind the hashtag Team Molly. But tragically, she never woke up.
Her parents, who are both lawyers, were obviously devastated. But they were also determined. They needed to know why this happened, and they wanted to make sure it never happened to another family. Their grief turned into a fight for accountability.
So the Steinsappers filed a wrongful death lawsuit. And it wasn't just against the helmet company. They aimed it squarely at Rad Power Bikes, one of the biggest e-bike companies in the entire country. The lawsuit really boils down to three powerful claims. First, they allege a serious design flaw with the brakes and the front wheel. Second, they argue that the bike's very design, its geometry, makes it unstable at high speeds. And third, and this one is so important, is the accusation that the company was marketing these powerful machines to children without giving them the warnings they needed. And this right here really gets to the core of the family's argument. Look at the marketing. You see pictures of kids on the bikes, you read glowing reviews from parents who bought them for their kids. But then you dig into the owner's manual, and buried on page 47, there it is, a warning that says the bike is for riders 18 and older. That disconnect is what this case is all about.
So while that lawsuit slowly makes its way through the courts, cities and police departments, well, they're not waiting for a verdict. They see a huge problem developing on their streets, and they're starting to respond with a lot more enforcement.
Which brings us to a city like Irvine, California, right next door to where our first story took place. The police there are making this a real priority. They're seeing kids pulling dangerous stunts, weaving through traffic on machines that are just way too powerful for public roads. And they are cracking down hard.
Okay, just take a second and look at this number. Police in Irvine reported that they've impounded bikes from 13-year-olds that were capable of going over 80 miles per hour. No, that's not a typo. 80. That is highway speed on something that looks like a bicycle, being ridden by a kid with no license and no training. It's unbelievable. And the police, they're drawing a very clear line in the sand. They're saying, look, this isn't about being anti-fun. We are all for legal, safe e-bikes. But they argue that letting a kid ride something this powerful isn't just letting kids be kids. It's straight up reckless endangerment. So we're left with this product that exists in a massive legal and safety void. On one side, you've got these heartbreaking tragedies. On the other, you have frustrated riders and families who feel like they're being unfairly targeted. It all forces this really fundamental question. As technology sprints ahead of the law, who is responsible for drawing the line? Is it up to the parents, the manufacturers, or the government? That is the tough question that communities everywhere are now being forced to answer.